So before we start, I want to tell you that this was an awesome invitation because I am generally invited by professional societies or companies, but I particularly like when a student chapter calls me into action because that speaks high about not only what is the topics that you are interested about, which yes, sustainability is one of them, but also tells me about your own leadership in your student chapter, to offer things to your peers and to elevate the everyday life that you advance, that is hidden in your computers and laptops to breathe different air and listen to different ideas. So thank you for that. And I also like the name of your student chapters, because that thing of wildcatters, I mean, for me, it was fantastic. So to start my presentation, I brought one of the bushers of Venezuela, where I was born. I was born in Altagracia de Orituco. And well, in 1922, our own, wildcat and busher was in the Maracaibo Lake province, and it spilled 100,000 barrels of oil into the air for more than 10 days. And the whole, society, geologists, but even common people from the town went to see this big thing that was going on, and that called the attention of the world into Venezuela's potential to export and to produce oil. So this is honoring your name, and as a brief, thank you note from my side about inviting me to this presentation. So today, what I will do is to share with you, okay, this is a presentation related to D&I, diversity and inclusion, right? And sustainability also has a component of diversity and inclusion, and we will see why, okay? Then we will ingrain, understand what is that SDG nomenclature, Sustainable Development Goals, okay? Why a mapping was needed, and some examples of how do we apply this kind of mapping, in particular the geophysical sustainability areas. The photos I chose for my presentations and the illustrations I picked for my presentation, I apply time to look for photos that are meaningful. So don't be shy about asking about the photos. And again, honoring the invitation of the D&I series, this is a photo from the USGS that we can use. It's open source. But the thing is that it shows the first Black geophysicist. And when I prepared this presentation, I received the invitation from Juan Pablo in February. And you might remember February was the month of the Black heritage in the United States. And I was inspired to find a photo of something that was meaningful. In this particular case, it was the first Black geophysicist. He was hired back in 1979. But the good thing about this is that I hope to plant some seeds here that will trigger some reflections. I don't have to spell out every reflection that the photos imply, but I am sure that you are capturing what I'm trying to say. And as a way of introduction, I would like just to share with you that geophysical careers in particular, and geoscientists in general, are people that have a privilege. We see the world with I would say, a unique perspective. And if you see a globe like this, I bet you can tell me or imagine what it is, right? We can ask Daniela, for example, what do you think is this map about, or this globe?
Is the word geoid?
It could be a geoid of some sort. Of what properties? It's probably a magnetic, right? Thing, anomaly, geophysical representation for sure of any sort, right? Of properties of the Earth. But we are used, even if we don't know exactly what the image in front of us is, we have, by formation, by our discipline and profession, a unique perspective of the interconnection of the processes that shape the Earth, and also a unique perspective of the time that takes. So, in 2016, there was a big earthquake, and in particular, this was in Italy. And I am just raising this to the attention because many times when we think about geophysics or geosciences, we are not quite certain about, how we relate to that. And we relate to geophysics in particular, generally with disasters, unfortunately. And one of them is, earthquakes. And earthquakes can be, something that hits you very closely. Okay, I don't know if here there are many people from Mexico or descendants from Mexico where it's a high seismicity area. But Italy is one of the most seismic countries of the world. And this particular earthquake was something that really hit my heart because we had a colleague working with us in Kuwait. I lived in Kuwait for 15 years. And he died in this big thing. He was spending vacations with the family, and he had bought a house, an apartment in that kind of rubble towards the left of this photo. And we just knew about that weeks later. So when disasters, hit, we praise and we are very aware of the role of all the kind of professionals, like firemen or the rescue team, the health providers, right? But where are the geophysicists and the geoscientists in all this story? Generally, when we hear about a geophysics person, is on the television, generally from the USGS or your local agency of earthquake. In particular, in Italy, that was the Instituto of Geophysics and Volcanology in Italy. But the thing is that generally there is somebody on the TV that will tell you how big the earthquake was and why we couldn't predict it, right? Well, that is very unfortunate because if you are very lucky, you may be able to see and listen to explanations about the seismicity of an area. This is in particular one geophysicist explaining about the San Andreas Fault here in the US. And maybe that helps with the readiness of the society and preparing people to understand what may happen as a geological hazard, right? But more is needed. And wow, things are happening around us. And we kind of have lost that connection with the reality and all this wave of, new consciousness that we have about the planet. So what do we do when we see things like this? You may have not seen this kind of photos, but this is a cemetery of tires. And this particular cemetery of tires is something that triggers even more a sense in us about, wow, how can I help with all these problems, right? When I saw this, I was mesmerized because I have driven cars for decades. And I have had to change the tires of my car, as I bet it has happened to you. But we never really think what will happen with all those tires. And let me tell you, there are cemeteries also of bicycle and motorcycles tires. And these kind of things are huge. This is an aerial map of this particular cemetery of tires that happens to be in Kuwait. That is how I came to know about this. And incredibly, in the middle of the desert, you have this kind of environmental damage, if you may. But then we think, well, now we would not do that anymore, but even the electrical cars have tires, right? So there are things that we cannot change and we don't particularly know what to do with our professions. And well, I want to share with you this photo, and please pay attention to the tractor there for scale. We are geoscientists, we need a scale always in the photos. And these are the non-recyclable fiberglass blades, you know, from the wind turbines. And yes, we already have an issue and landfills also with that. So we are immersed in this kind of way where we are shifting towards a new way of looking at things and trying to have a circular economy or renewable energies. And yes, we ask ourselves, wow, so what is the value proposition of geosciences? Why we are called when there is the volcano already exploded and lava is there in La Palmas, like in 2021, or there is an earthquake and we cannot even go to the rescue. We are not rescue workers or health providers, right? So I was already moved by this when in 2016 I received a call from it was a very strange call. I was in the office in Kuwait, and my phone rings in the landline. I said, how strange, everybody would call me at the mobile. And I pick up the phone, and they ask, is this Maria Angela Capello? I go, yes. We are calling you from the United Nations Migration Office of Kuwait. After 30 seconds, the other end of the line, the guy laughs and he tells me, every time I call somebody, people remains mute. I said, but of course. And he says, no, it's nothing wrong, Miss Maria. What we want is to invite you because the chief of mission wants to speak with you about something. I say, oh, yes, so we make an appointment and I get to go to this United Nations fantastic lobby in Kuwait. And I see all these, posters hanging from the ceiling. This was 2016, remember? And I have not known about these beautiful icons, colorful, and with these numbers. And I start reading, no hunger, no poverty, climate control, and all these goals. These were the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And that is how I myself started to understand and to study about sustainability. And what is sustainability? Well, probably the best concept is this on the screen that says that sustainability means meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own, right? Their own needs. So many times people think about sustainability like a green thing, protecting the Amazon or planting a tree. But in fact, sustainability relies with three main pillars, which are the economic development, and I would say that SDGs relate mainly with the development of people, the economic development of people, reducing poverty. The second one, the social development, okay? And doing those two, economic and social development of our society, without damaging the environment. It's like we just had this epiphany, we discovered the environment is finite, and we cannot damage because the time when we are doing that is completely different than the geologic time, and the planet is only one. So, more than 200, about 193 countries under the United Nations framework approved in 2015 the launching of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These were the icons I was taking a look at. And these are the inspiration that I took about building something for geosciences and understanding where is this value proposition. So as you can see, here we are at the university. Number 4 is what, Daniela?
Quality education.
Quality of education. I mean, that is important to provide education of quality globally so that society will be better and the economy will develop if you have a good quality of education. And if we take anyone, for example, the number 10, Shan, can you read it from there? What is number 10?
Reduced inequalities.
Reduce inequalities. Why we have to have a certain standard of, for example, healthcare or transportation in Italy and a completely different one in another country, you name it, right? These differences and inequalities are things that are serious. And if you think about that, if you reduce that, you advance the economic pillar, the social pillar, and it has to be protecting the environment. So this is a summary of the SDGs and the framework it provides. The most important thing is that all stakeholders involved are committed towards sustainability, and that is the framework. This is the global framework for sustainability. That is the most amazing thing, I would say. So we have to look now for ways of, okay, I am maybe a geophysicist, you are a geophysicist, you are a geologist, and Sean, you are a geologist. So how do the three of you advance sustainability, right? So that is how the idea came to be. And I started looking around and to try to understand how and why SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, were relevant or not for what we do. If you think about that, what is the main sector that traditionally, remember I am a geophysicist, and when I started in this path, I did it for my discipline that I knew better, and I know better, right? What is the sector that employs most geophysicists? Yes, the oil and gas industry. So I look, okay, what is the oil and gas industry saying about the SDGs? And when I search at the main companies that work in oil and gas, like Total Energy or Schlumberger or BP or the Petronas of the world, in their websites, you can find their standing on sustainability. And they express their goals, their strategies, and their activities in terms of the SDGs. How they are advancing the SDGs. And, well, more examples come from ENI, yes, Chevron, Occidental, and Shell, right? So they all work in this kind of approach. And what about the small to medium-sized companies? Well, some of them are already in the space of the SDGs, and some of them, like these, are starting to engage in that space of the sustainability in terms of the SDGs and roadmaps to achieve that. What about mining? Now comes to one of our core business as well, right? Mining. Not in good shape these days also, but incrementally more and more relevant, even for the energy transition, right? So we can see here some examples I took with relevant operations in the North America. And we can see that they also have this kind of approach with the SDGs. Newmont and Alcoa are talking in terms of SDGs. And BHP is also talking in terms of the SDGs. How I know it? Because this lady, her name is Bobby Foote, and she went to Geneva in Switzerland, to the United Nations headquarters, to show the sustainability strategy of her company. She's vice president there. She's one of the highest women in mining nowadays. SDG 5, gender equality. Okay, so she was showing in general her own, company strategy. And does anybody recognize this fellow? Bill Gates. Of course. So Bill Gates is he appointed goalkeepers, okay, in his foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates. And you can see these are the 17 SDGs that are so relevant for what he does. He does not invest money in projects, even humanitarian, if they don't advance the SDGs. Interesting. I came with the idea of launching the Sustainable Geophysical Atlas, the Geophysical Sustainability Atlas. And what was that? Well, the Geophysical Sustainability Atlas was an article that was published by the Society of Expression Geophysicists Open Access. Yes, that is good because you can download it for free, even if you are not a member, okay? And what we did, me and my two co-authors, we mapped the techniques processes and workflows of geophysics to each one of the SDGs. So how can geophysics advance SDG 1, 2, 3 until the 17? And we explain how. And we discover that we can do things to advance each one of the SDGs. And that was not only beautiful, but inspiring. How did we summarize all this mapping? We summarized it in this wheel that we took 3 bullets for each one of the SDGs as a summary of all the analysis we did. And we map it in the wheel that is, iconic for these SDGs. And the SDG considered it was so important that it used it for the cover of the January magazine. So it was, this past January, we celebrated 1 year of our article. And I have been, mesmerized by the tremendous impact the article had. And then Juan Pablo comes and he asks me, so how do we apply this atlas? Right? So, and I will bounce back to Juan Pablo and I will tell him, well, listen, for example, if I were to cluster what is that I have done in all my career, mostly I have advanced one of the SDGs. So one way to apply the atlas is understanding where we are. And I know that what I do every day up to today is to advance SDG 7, which is to provide affordable and clean energy for all. Okay? And I am not ashamed to say that my experience comes from the oil and gas industry, because that is the industry that still will keep providing reliable and safe energy for many decades to come. And our expertise will serve other industries and sectors to, for example, storage CO2, storage hydrogen, or produce those kind of things that require a pipeline or a very complex technology to be produced. So, let me show you 3 examples of the application of the atlas, because with that, it will become hopefully more clear how this helps into the motivation and understanding of sustainability. The first example is how we apply this atlas to the United Nations European Commission Women in Resource Management Group that I chair with Christina Robinson. She works in Saipan. And Robinson Marras, she is Italian also. And the second example is the application to the infrastructure and near-surface geophysics. And the third one is an example in oil and gas. We cannot go away from here without an example in oil and gas. So from the first one, this was presented last October in the IMAGE convention in Denver. When we analyze what we do with the Women in Resource Management Group, we realized that we not only advance SDG 5, which is gender equality, but providing tools, techniques, standards, and self-empowerment to entrepreneurs in mining who are women, we are also advancing a variety of other SDGs in oil and gas, in renewables, in the public sector, in training, and yes, in mining. When we applied the atlas to the infrastructure, it was a discovery as well to realize that we were not only advancing SDG 11 that calls for sustainable infrastructures, but a variety of other SDGs that were evidenced by the process of this Forum of Near-Surface Geophysics. The third example, let's deep dive into the third example, which is oil and gas. And I would say that the cornerstones of the sustainability focus in oil and gas are SDG 7 and SDG 13, because mostly all majors have already declared their commitment to net zero. So, because of that, what are the opportunities and the key areas to advance those 2 SDGs 7 and 13? Well, this is one example with more granularity. I would say that geophysicists can help in three main areas: reducing and avoiding waste, enhancing hydrocarbon recovery, and reducing the GHG emissions. So if I were to summarize, right, what is the Geophysical Sustainability Atlas? Juan Pablo was asking, how do we apply this atlas, right, Juan Pablo? Well, I would say that it helped us to detect opportunities to advance sustainability with what we do. Identify the main SDGs that are involved in specific processes. The other day I was speaking with two young fellows that were working in one drilling company here in the United States. And they were sharing with me that sometimes they feel even ashamed to say they are working in a drilling company. I said, but why? And they say, well, because of the, we are polluting and the oil industry is not in high regards. I say, well, you can always say that you can reply that you are not drilling wells. What you are doing is contributing to the Sustainable Development 7 because you help to provide clean and affordable energy for all. And with that, right, you reduce poverty and increment the quality of life of so many people. This is what you do, because that is the ultimate goal that we do. Our ultimate goal, for example, in geophysics, is not to become the, geeks in, I don't know, tau P transformation, pre-stack migration or something like that. No, I think that we need to be clear that what we do helps advancing the SDGs. And that is the motivation that I think we have achieved with this kind of mapping. The wheel also helps to envision potential partnerships with other, disciplines, okay, to do more, and to raise the awareness about the importance of geophysics for this subject with our stakeholders. So, if you ask me, I would say that the wheel of sustainability is like a mirror. Why I say it's like a mirror? Because if you see the wheel like this, right, you can pinpoint what is that you do in several SDGs, and you can see yourself in the wheel. That is why the wheel is like a mirror. When we published the Sustainability Atlas, it went kind of viral for our own community of geosciences, of course. But let me share with you that the article has the highest altimetric score of all times in the Leading Edge magazine of the SEG. And it also has been translated to Swahili, to Serbian, and it's been translated into Spanish. And not by me, by student chapters that are willing to translate it to other languages. I have been interviewed, my colleagues have been called for as panelists, and more. So, what is the next step? The next step is what I am fully immersed right now. We are in the final yards of finalizing a Geosciences Sustainability Atlas. It has been a gigantic task, and we are a team of 11 people from all over the world. We even have a volcanologist in New Zealand. So imagine. And we are building this Geosciences Sustainability Atlas, and we have received the endorsement of the UNESCO. So we are so happy that this is coming to fruition. And it will be, again, feasible to be downloaded and shared, for free, because the idea is to inspire the future generations. I want to tell you something. When I arrived into Kuwait 15 years ago, 16 now, because I live there and I have been already in Houston for a year. I used to go to the field through, there was a road, an asphalt road, that would take us to several of the gathering centers of the field. And I didn't know that, I was there from Venezuela, right? And in Venezuela, iguanas are green and are big like this. But then one day I am in this road and I saw like there is sand always going around in the road. And one day I see these fellows, little fellows, like 2 or 3, and then I realized these are moving and there are animals, but it was too late and I probably killed 1 or 2. So when I arrived to the office, I said, oh my God, I think I saw an iguana or something. And they said, yes, it's called pichi 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 in Arabic, right? I said, oh, I didn't know you had iguanas in the desert. And they told me, yes, those are iguanas of the desert. And their name is pichi pichi. And then they told me, how come haram? That means what a pity that you step on them. I said, well, what can I do? So then I paid more attention, and yes, I had to be very careful. But the thing is that then they expanded the road for benefiting the expansion of operations as well of Kuwait Oil Company, because in 15 years many things happened, and they expanded the production from 2.5 million to 3 million barrels of oil per day. And guess what happened? There were no more iguanas. So if some cautions or precautions could have been taken, perhaps there was, the way to develop economically, socially, but also taking care of the environment. Those little fellows are no more there. They probably are smarter than all of us and went to another area. But this also means that perhaps the cornerstone of the whole problem is the overpopulation that we have. And I would like to leave that in like a seed for you to think about. It's not that the animals come to the city, it's that we have expanded so much what we do that we are cornering all of them in pockets of the earth. So what we did is for the future generations. I like to share with you this wonderful photo, which I love. I hope she will be a geologist or a geophysicist, even better, right? And that she finds in her future the many applications that we can provide for all sectors. That is my last slide. I just want to acknowledge my admiration for all those geoscientists that work in sustainability and are not shy to raise their voice about what else they can contribute in order to support, sustainability. And of course, I want to appreciate your invitation to deliver this lecture. With this, I finish, and I will be happy to listen to your comments. So thank you.
You're getting virtual applause as well.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yes, virtual applause. Oh, you got hearts now. Yeah.
That's good.
Maybe we should turn on at least some of the lights just for Q&A.
Yeah.
You did very well at like centering yourself on the camera.
Good, thank you.
And if anybody from the virtual meeting, oh, you probably can't hear me. If anybody from the virtual meeting has a question, you can write it in the chat. Or unmute yourself. Sorry, the echo.
Try now? No.
Next. Or Anna, if you could just say what I said into that mic, that's fine. If they have questions, they can put it in the chat or unmute themselves.
Well, it's the usual. After 2 years of Zoom, everybody knows. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not necessary to ask questions, but you can also share your comments or your thoughts. Yes.
So this period of what they call the green revolution, where we're leaving oil and gas behind. And now that it's just reasonable. It's not going to happen over a short period of time. What are your thoughts about this period in terms of sustainability? I mean, we still have to use oil and gas, right?
Yes.
But how do we get around the fact that, we've polluted the atmosphere to a large degree?
We have been lacking is a good communication about what is that we do. Because if you do a correlation about the GDP or the gross profit per capita with the quality of life and the levels of access to electricity and energy, you will see there is a close correlation. And the only way to come out of poverty or the level of poverty is with access to energy. And it's not only coming out from poverty, but also coming out from ignorance, because you need also access to knowledge, access to internet, right? So that is powered by energy. My answer to your question is multifaceted. I think that the oil and gas will have to revert the way we communicate with the society. We need to open our doors also more for society to fully understand the value we bring, because it's a tremendous value. And did you know that, for example, in the UNESCO, that is in charge of education initiatives globally, there are only 3 geoscientists as employees, whereas we need to have more geoscientists in everything that we do, because very few careers, very few other professions, if any, have the vision of a geologist in terms of how interconnected the systems in the planet are, the environment, okay, the resources as well. So geoscientists are going to be part of policymakers. They are to be heard in terms of regulations, and they need to lead also the comprehension that energy goes from properly developing mining, oil and gas, hydrogen, and all the resources we have, in the understanding that our life on Earth is not geologic times. So we cannot reproduce the resources. So that's why. I don't know, there is no clear answer to your question, but certainly it goes and falls into the realm of communication. I have, for example, a counterexample. Maybe we need to find a Greta Thunberg from our side in oil and gas that is not banging on us so freely and easily, but doing the opposite. I mean, supporting what we are doing.
So one thought about green energy conversion. He made the point that the enemy is not oil and gas. The enemy is emissions from oil and gas. But people have vilified oil and gas like it's the cause of all our problems. But it's like you say, it's actually the gift to civilization, energy.
Yes.
And so what we need to attack is the emissions, right?
The emissions.
Nobody's going to contradict that that's not causing a problem. But anyway, I thought that was a good one.
Well, that is a good thought. The question was, I can see Maris is online. Thank you, Maris, for attending the presentation. The question was if the problem is not the oil and gas company, the problems are the emissions. And I have a question here for the room, and maybe also online. Yes, the camera. A question for the room and the online people. The question is, raise your hand if you have calculated your own carbon footprint. So for those online, I want to tell you that we have, from the crowd here, we have only 3 hands up. And so in many ways, it's easy, you know, Professor Paul, is it?
Mhm.
It's easy to blame Shell, ExxonMobil, ENI, Repsol, or Ecopetrol for the emissions. But do we think twice when we take the car to go pick up something that we left forgotten at the supermarket? Or do we at least consider going on a carpool to work and commuting with less emissions? Have people considered that flying business or economy is a state of sustainability, a statement about sustainability as well? No? Because if you think about that, one business class ticket takes like 4 or 5 or maybe more economy class seats. So to optimize the transportation, you have to optimize the number of passengers per unit. And that applies on road and on air. So it's something that doesn't, it is our individual choices, which is the scope 3. So that is why scope 3 is so difficult. Is this our own individual choices? Very important comment, Professor Paul. I want to listen from a Latin American.
I have one question.
Yes.
Our comment is a question related to, talking now specifically about jobs for geologists or geophysicists and things that are not oil and gas or mining. Is it really, you have worked with this, have you really seen people like geologists, like geophysicists, geoscientists in general, getting jobs in some
The question, yes. The question is, what about jobs? Have I seen trends out of oil and gas and mining for geoscientists? Okay, I will answer with this. I will rest in, very peacefully when I will see the first advertising of Lipton tea or cornflakes de Kellogg's asking for geophysicists to search for water. That has not happened yet. But I envision that will soon happen, but not only searching for water and resources in the underground. I think geophysicists and geologists are naturally called also for infrastructure integrity issues, and that has to come more and more into the scene for heritage preservation, archaeology, for contamination issues, okay, where geochemists play a big role. I recently visited OSU, Oklahoma State University, and over there, PhD students, can you raise your hand if you are a PhD student here? Okay, let me tell you that one of your peers, but in OSU, she is pursuing her PhD in geochemistry, okay? And you know what she did? She got a very small grant from AGU of $2,000. And with those $2,000, she bought a collector sample for water that comes in I saw those 2 suitcases, plastic suitcases, and inside has many things. And she has involved, she has engaged the community of Oklahoma, testing the quality of water of rivers, households, and lakes. I didn't know Oklahoma State had so many lakes. I thought Michigan was the top one in the United States, but it turns out that it seems to be Oklahoma. And she uses, of course, the $2,000 didn't account for the use of the university labs and the boat from the university to go for the rivers and the lakes. But with those resources, she was able to collect the samples, and she didn't do that alone. She did it with the community. So she has more than 500 people engaged in this, and she has produced a map of the water quality in Oklahoma. So my question to you is, are you considering including the community in your PhD study? If you have not yet, consider doing that, because I think it's a commitment of each one of us to make sure that our profession does more than just a table or an Excel or a plot or a math lab kind of program result. Thank you. I hope this will propel you to do more, right? Because it's something that even a campaign of presentations to your former high school or to the high schools here in Houston to motivate high schoolers to study geosciences is something that is achievable for all of us. So I would like to motivate you to do that.
Any hints you can give us about the new geoscience atlas?
Yes. The new Geosciences Atlas, instead of mapping the whole thing to each one of the 17 SDGs, will showcase the 3 dimensions in which we work. Those 3 dimensions are people, planet, and prosperity. People, planet, and prosperity, the 3 Ps. So we will cluster the main SDGs related to people, main SDGs related to planet, and those to prosperity. All SDGs are interrelated, but there are some main ones and secondary ones in each one of these dimensions. And for each dimension, we have selected 4 to 5 examples of application. So the OSU one is one of the examples selected. Other examples are, for example, there is some, I think it's based on geophysics, archaeological studies in Lithuania related to Nazis mass graves or something. Other examples include very technical things about oil and gas, and etc. that compose the whole atlas. And there is also a sub-chapter summarizing, the title of the chapter is Geosciences, an evergreen catalog. And we try to have a catalog of all geosciences disciplines. And why evergreen? Because as technology advances, now we have planetary geology. Would you have thought that just 10 years ago? We are about to send a rocket to bring back samples from Mars. The things that are happening are amazing. Yes.
And as you showed, like all of the companies right now are involved in that thing of sustainability, and people that are
Just talk about it.
okay, the people that are the stakeholders, the people that put the money, the investors, they just want to put the money in something that is involved in sustainability. And yeah, Scott Tinker, he usually says on his conferences, like, usually geologists and geophysicists and geoscientists usually say, like, no, with these things, sustainability, we're getting no jobs, we're getting no opportunities. And he says, it's completely the opposite. There are so many things to do. There are so many things that we can get involved into. We just don't look for it, but they are there. So yeah, that's
1,000. But we were walking towards this conference room, and he shared with me that in his very native Colombia, there is a wonderful project that is 1 geologist per municipality. And that project is being led by 1 lady geologist. Yes, I am so happy that she was a woman. Well, you must know that I have, like 2 hands. So one advances sustainability and the other one advances diversity and gender diversity. The thing is that they want to propose to have a geoscientific person by municipality, because this person can help not only with the readiness of the society towards geological hazards. It doesn't matter if you live in the mountain or in the coast areas, because in the coastal areas there are hazards, there are landslides, there are contamination of the water, there are tsunamis, there are so many things. Even coastal profile preservation is important. And in the mountains, other kind of problems are there. But then there is also, what are the resources and how to exploit them with a consciousness about the environment. So that is a beautiful project. So sometimes ideas come from unexpected places.
That's tremendous, because also one of the objectives of that project, it's called like that, it's one geologist per town. So the thing, the main problem is that Colombia right now, when there's oil and gas or mining or whatever project, even water in any town, the people from the town, they say, no, we don't want that. We don't want anything that is related to oil or gas or mining, or we don't want anything because they don't trust.
They don't trust.
They
We
don't
have
trust
lost,
the company.
yes, we are not
They
trusted
don't trust
anymore.
the companies, they don't trust the mining companies, they don't trust the oil and gas companies. And the only way that they can trust those companies is if they understand what they are trying to do there, because they don't understand. Because usually geologists or engineers or whoever, they go there and they say, oh no, yeah, because we did a basic modeling that there's the UPV model, and they don't understand that. They need someone that it goes there, that usually there in the town, that doesn't live in the city, that's usually talking to the community and making
Yes.
them understand why is this important.
Yes.
And that's why they're trying to get this project of having one geoscientist for each town in the country. And
For the people online, Juan Pablo highlighted the importance of having this program because people do not trust anymore, not engineers, not even companies, not geologists, about drilling wells, and they don't provide social license or permits to operate. But yes, I want to reemphasize we can work in many things. And one of the not so recent but very interesting case was the partnership that happened in an area in Spain, in La Mancha, in Spain, that is called Lo Hueco. Lo Hueco. And in Lo Hueco, they were doing some works to build a train. Railway, no? And doing that, they discover a huge fossil bone. And they say, oh my God, what is this? So they stopped the construction of this, it was huge construction, and they ended up realizing that this was like a marsh, an ancient, marsh site where they discover not only the new, is called the Titanosaurus Panchalopithecus, something like that, because it is named after a Don Quixote character, and it's called Lohuecotitan Pananophilus, because of this character of Don Quixote. But they also discovered 14 other dinosaurs, 30 sea turtles, and I don't know how many other lizards. And it was the railway company that sponsored the creation of a new museum that has now attracts thousands of tourists to the area. So Lo Hueco is one of those cases where they had on site 300 students of geology from all over Europe in the excavations by hand of these new dinosaur and other species that were discovered over there. So it is fascinating. Who doesn't remember the first time that you realized something like a dinosaur existed on Earth? I think that is one of the most striking ideas a human can conceive. And is always, the center of attraction of museums of natural history and sciences. Every single, in Kuwait, they built a whole museum with synthetic dinosaurs. Not even one bone is real. And they have huge dinosaurs and an artificial rainy forest for you to walk around and understand the environment where they live, which is fantastic. Why not? I mean, they couldn't have their own, so they built it.
But that problem you mentioned, outsiders. A project in Papua New Guinea with academic geologists, and we go in and the people said, you're gold miners, and we got sort of dragged back to this village, right? And and there was a crazy guy there. He said, those are gold miners. And the chief came out. He goes, okay, you present your point of view that you're not gold miners, and this guy will present his point of view that that you are gold miners, and we'll vote. And so we get up, and I give our case, like, I'm not a gold miner. I work for the University of Texas, you know. And this crazy guy gets up and goes into this harangue about how we were imposters and all. And then I noticed people are like getting really serious, and I thought, what happens if they vote against us? But they voted for us, that we were going so we'd be able to get out of it. It was a close call because of that mistrust, you know, that apparently gold miners did come and they messed up the river or something. You know, they had this mistrust of people. And it's hard to, once that's messed up, it's hard to, you know, get out of that sort of mindset.
You know, when I was on the university, we had a field trip to one farm, and we stayed at one night, and then when we woke up the next day, we went to breakfast at the hotel we were staying, and the people from the hotel told us, guys, you have to leave right now at the time, because people don't want you here. They think you're coming here to find gold or oil or what they just have to leave.
Wow. Where was that?
It's so you have Bogota, you have Medellin. It's like 2 hours from this city called Medellin. It's in the state of Antioquia, yeah. Because there's a lot of gold mining that it's illegal there, and they're also looking for other minerals, and they just told us they think you're here working for a company, so you have to leave. But we were students, we were at the university, but we had to leave.
Mm.
Even in the US, it is not as bad as either of those examples, but I was drilling a well in Pennsylvania one time. I was drilling a helium well. People absolutely dislike that, and with our whole crew, there was a day that and again, not as bad as these situations, we went to like 3 or 4 restaurants until we found somewhere that would serve us dinner that night while trying to like work on the rig. Because we just had like our gear, it was obvious, or I don't know how they knew, but they're like, we don't want the helium wells around here. And so even, you know, here, there's strong distrust.
Yes,
So.
there is a distrust.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
the past 50 years, bad actors have ruined environments all over the world, right? So it's going to be very difficult to get back any sort of trust.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
And-
guess, like you said, local people will help.
Even with the renewable,
Energy sources,
Yeah.
we have issues now, and you probably know that wind farms are now located offshore.
Yeah.
For many reasons, but also because you cannot have a huge wind farm on land. It ruins the scenery, it damages, yes. But offshore, I mean, it's like la tierra de nadie. Yes. So, well, thanks to you. Thank you. And thank you for those who attended online. Appreciate it. Yeah.